We're really happy to see you here today. We're going to be talking about kind of springing forward now that we did the fall and got all that, like what next? How do we keep our momentum going? And we have several of us will be co-presenting and we'll kind of introduce ourselves as we go. There we go. Because we have a big call, we're asking people to just stay muted until you want to talk. You can raise your hand either physically or use the raise hand button. Please do feel free to rename yourself to include your pronouns and your institution. And you can also click and type in the chat box if you need to let us know anything. So just as a quick reminder, what is a NIC Cast? It's a kind of a webcast. It's an interactive webinar, interactive meeting of our networked improvement community to let us share ideas and have discussions with each other and to build our community. So a way that we're checking in with each other and getting to know each other more. And today, the specific goals are to talk again about the kind of the networked improvement community change and research process. We are going to be focused on supporting the program NIC teams as all of you work to improve secondary mathematics teacher preparation, and focused on building community and sharing vision within your program NIC and across our community. And today specifically, we're looking at trying to maintain the momentum, as I said, through the spring semester. What did you learn from the fall semester? What adjustments are needed? And what is the next PDSA cycle or set of PDSA cycles that your team is planning to pursue?
And just as a reminder, when we talk about PDSA cycles, we mean the plan, do, study, act cycle. And you'll see that it's an iterative process. And so, as Wendy said, we're going to take time today to reflect on what we did this past semester. It could have been one PDSA cycle, it could have been multiple PDSA cycles, and then share out and think about in smaller groups about what our next PDSA cycle or cycles will be as we move forward in our work this semester. So we want to think about refining. We want to make sure that our steps are in sync with our aim, and we want to make sure that we really are trying out the different change ideas that we have in relation to our driver diagram. Next slide, please.
Mommy,
Okay, and so just as I mentioned a little bit, or just a slide ago, we want to make sure that our cycles do relate to our aim. So we'll be revisiting our aim and driver diagrams today. And again, we'll be kind of focusing on, you know, what makes a good PDSA cycle. And so things that we noticed in the fall from the applications and from the conversations within the NIC Cast is thinking about picking the right size for your effort. And then also, what does measuring progress really mean? Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a couple of examples by what we mean by the last slide. So take a look on the left. This is probably, this is one of the PDSA cycles that we saw in the fall. Design and implementing an equity and social justice focused sequence of activities and methods courses. It's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy, and it doesn't really have something that's really measurable. So next, Wendy, please. So if we think about it and refine it a little bit more, what does that really mean? We're going to be, and so if we refine that PDSA cycle a little bit more to be more specific to our goal, which is in relation to our driver diagram, we're going to design, we're going to implement at least one time, and then maybe we want to repeat the implementation at another site. So this is just an example of taking one of our current PDSA cycles and refining it a little bit more towards the change process. Next, please.
And Margaret, if you don't mind me interrupting, so rather than doing one big cycle, it would be doing a series of smaller cycles.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary, for clarifying. Okay, so the second one, same thing. Take a moment to read it and then think in your head about, the doability of it, the length of time, and then the measurement of it. So I'll give you a moment to think about that in terms of how could we refine it to be a little bit more clear, and then also thinking about that measuring piece. Okay, Wendy. Okay, so as you can see, it's a little bit more specific. Like, what do we mean by regular check-in meetings? Okay, so now we've refined it to what our goal is around a check-in meeting, 2 times per semester with students, and then documenting retention in the program, and instead of just saying, well, we're going to increase the number of people who complete the program. Okay, and then last one. Okay, so this one we see a lot, or just insert whatever recruit, whatever partner you want to say. So instead of just saying, hey, we're going to recruit a new partner as your PDSA cycle, thinking about convening stakeholders that have a common vision, values, and beliefs about your program, and using that as a cycle and being specific about it, and being the specific piece again, being a common vision, values, and beliefs. Okay, next slide. All right, Allison.
So if you've thought about your PDSA cycle and attended to the size that it should be, and being specific with what it is you exactly want to do with this PDSA cycle, one of the things you have to consider is how you're going to measure whether or not you've made progress. I know for our team, we struggle because we think about this a lot of times in terms of large research grants that require very specific types of data to support what we've been doing. And so a lot of times we kind of have to step back and say, okay, what kind of evidence can we collect that will actually help us know whether or not our PDSA cycle has made the improvement or made steps towards the improvement that we want to? It's not always as rigorous as you might collect for a very specific research study. So really think about what kind of data will be helpful in determining whether or not you've actually made that progress. And how often should you measure it? And what are you actually measuring in order to do this? So some examples of things that you might collect, you might include surveys and then analyze those surveys in some way. Depending on what your PDSA cycle is about, that might be appropriate. But it might also be appropriate to document your progress with just meeting notes and minutes, creating collected documents in a folder that can be reviewed by your entire team. Simple interviews can work rather than very carefully crafted survey questionnaires that you send out to a variety of your stakeholders. So really make sure that the evidence that you're choosing to use fits the scale and purpose of what your PDSA cycle is trying to do. And whatever data you collect should be something that can inform where you're going to go next. Next slide, please. As you're thinking about your PDSA cycles, one of the most important things is to actually record your work in some way. So document your PDSA cycles. And we have a couple of different forms that different teams use to document their PDSA cycles. You have to choose which one works best for you and some organization of collecting them that works for your team, so that you can look back on the work that you've done and consider whether or not you're actually moving towards the improvement or the change that you want to make. A lot of benefits come out of making records of the work that you're doing. It makes it easier for you to share your work with other teams, and possibly even move towards publication on the work that you're doing, if that's a direction that you want to go. But it also helps you look back and recognize that you actually are making improvements, because you can look back to where you were at the beginning and think about where you are in whatever your current cycle is. I'm going to pause here for just a moment, and I guess we could use the chat for this. Are there any just general questions about PDSA cycles? You're going to get an opportunity to talk in small groups, but are there general questions about the slides that have just been shared or about PDSA cycles before we move into that? Gary says it is hard to take the time to document. Yes, this is a struggle we have. I know it's a struggle our team has, and I feel like I'm a broken record at every meeting we have when people tell me the things they've done and I say, have you put that in the PDSA cycle folder? Have you documented that work? So it is something that you have to be persistent with. Stephanie comment is asking for tips for making this feel essential and not an add-on. I don't know, I'd love to open that up. Anybody have suggestions on that?
We actually had a lot of conversation on our Kentucky group about that this summer during the conference time, because we were starting to feel like it was an add-on, but we didn't want it to feel that way. And how could we make it more integrated? And so we were just more careful and more intentional about our local meetings. Before, we just kind of invited everybody, but now we've gone through the process and have actually kind of narrowed down our team a little bit more, and it feels more intimate in that we're moving forward. And then to the point about the documentation, we felt the same way. I will say that we finally moved to the Excel document, or that we use it in Google Sheets, and it was a game changer. So all of our meetings, we pull that up, and that guides our meetings and our agenda, and we take notes right in there. So we don't actually keep like a separate formal agenda anymore, because we do all of our documenting, reflecting next steps, etc., all in that document. And thus far, it seems to have worked really well. And now it just feels like a regular part of our program transformation and planning, rather than another meeting that we're having.
That's great. I think that you're going to get an opportunity. We're getting ready to move into breakout groups. So Brian, you want to take that over, and Wendy, I think we need to go to the next slide. Some of you have more questions about this, and the breakout rooms are going to give you an opportunity to talk in a smaller group about some of those same questions, and we'll come back afterwards and share out. So Brian, it's all yours.
Hi everyone, a brief introduction. My name is Brian Lawler. I'm a faculty member at Kennesaw State University here in Atlanta. My task is to launch us into beginning to work on our purpose for today, which is to reflect a little bit on the PDSA cycles we ran at our sites, at our program NICs in the fall, and begin to refine the process and brainstorm about the structures of maybe our very next PDSA cycle, or maybe you can even foresee a sequence of PDSA cycles. Everyone will have the opportunity to select one of 5 breakout rooms, which I'll describe brief in a moment. We identified these 5 topics as areas of interest that were emerging from examining the current PDSA cycles happening and people's interests. So what we would like you to do when you get into these, let me also say, we will establish 5 breakout rooms with the names that appear on the next slide, and you will be able to move yourself into the breakout room via Zoom. Some of you are like familiar with that process, but if not, just hang around and Stephanie will lead you through exactly what to click through to get to that breakout room. And we'll spend about a little under 30 minutes in those rooms. What we'd first like you to do with your new small group of people is for each person to share the change idea they tested during the fall, or one of them. Maybe it's your most recent one, maybe it's the one that's just most foremost on your mind, and share some of the results or insights that you gained from that PDSA cycle. Next, will one person volunteer to just be like the center of the conversation and share what they're thinking about the next PDSA cycle during the spring semester, here's an opportunity to get input, some feedback, brainstorm ideas together and figure out what that might look like at your site. I won't read through each of the 4 prompts there. Well, I think I will. Under step 3, there are 4 prompts for while you're thinking about that PDSA cycle. What will be the focus, the change idea to be tested? Does that fit? Where does it match to your driver diagram and, of course, the aim? How will you measure your progress? And then we kind of have this shape. What will be the very next step and who will be responsible for that next step? As time allows, it would be great to get through 2 or 3 people at least talking through that process. So you might try to monitor that time where no one spends more than, say, 8 to 10 minutes and you move on to a next person to talk about their ideas. Before we pull back at 3:15 Eastern time, so do the proper subtraction to get back to home, please choose a spokesperson to share some insights from your group. That might be insights, new questions that emerged, sort of an interesting puzzle that was solved, or even just what each person is talking about. So yeah, we'll have that time. Go ahead and click to the next slide. I'll briefly say these groups and let people start identifying and moving into them. Stick around if you need help moving the groups or for any clarification with the instructions. So here are your 5 groups. 1 would be focused on recruiting candidates and increasing diversity. Second group, infusing equity somewhere in some aspect of the program. A 3rd breakout group about program structuring or restructuring. A 4th breakout group focusing on strengthening partnerships. And the 5th might just need some technical assistance or other types of topics. We recognize some people might start in that group and only be there for 5, 10, 15 minutes and then move over to another group. So with that said, please go ahead, Stephanie, and open up the groups and give us instructions on how we move ourselves.
Okay, so those rooms are open and you should be able to self-select with the breakout function. And it looks like people are starting to move into those rooms. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you're having trouble finding the buttons there. Down at the bottom, there's usually a breakout button there under More. And if you are not updated to the most current version, you may not be seeing that, and I can move you.
Stephanie, this is Liza. Can I go to 2, please?
Yes, let me move you there.
Thank you.
Welcome. Jennifer, which room would you like to go to?
I'm just looking at which one because these are new names compared to the racks. So I'm just thinking about where I'm going to end up.
Okay.
Get done, and is the semester too long? So looking at that, and Gary gave us a lot of helpful insights on that. And then we also saw that even if the desired you don't get the desired outcome from your PDSA cycle, we can usually learn a lot, and that can also inform our next PDSA cycle. Anybody have anything else they want to add?
Very well stated. Thank you.
Good job, Diane.
Thank you. Maybe a second group could share.
Brian, who's the second group? Sorry.
Any group.
I don't remember our numbers.
Any group could go second.
Infusing equity was the second group, and I joined that group. So I think where the Infusing Equity group ended up follows really nicely from where the first group shared. The struggle that doing things that infuse equity into your program, it's difficult to get participation. And so there was a lot of conversation about how do you draw people in. And Brian's last comment was try something, which is the heart of a PDSA cycle. Try something and see what happens, and be okay with small incremental improvements. Don't feel like you have to get everybody there at the very beginning. Let something grow, but document what you're doing along the way so that you can keep trying different things or repeating the same thing to increase participation. Others have anything to add on that?
I'd like to emphasize the value of documenting is that program NICs across the whole country will have similar challenges, and what you learn along the way will inform other programs and kickstart them hopefully in some productive ways. Okay, I guess maybe we're math people, so we want to go in order. The third group was program restructuring. So would someone from that group tell us? Margaret, you're nodding. You're like, yes, I want to go in order.
Okay, but sorry, I just couldn't remember the numbers. Okay, so we had a lovely conversation, and it actually kind of went back to some of our first slides about reminders about PDSA cycles. So just thinking about onboarding people to the teams, and so you know, I think we all struggle with, we want to get everybody on board and we want to send out invitations, and people rightly and selfishly say, well, I'll be involved if it involves this, or I'll do this if I can do this, or, you know, something like that. So, you know, how do we keep moving our programs forward and transforming them, but in making sure that people all come together for that. And so we just talked about like using the PDSA cycles and using our driver diagram and AIM to help bring people into the conversation and into our teams, the local teams and the larger teams. And so sometimes it's a matter of, yeah, a smaller team is planning our next steps or planning the PDSA cycles. But when we get there, maybe we need to involve more people, and so we can give a more specific invitation for that. And then we also just revisited that we have a lot of goals around the restructuring, but that a lot of us have had to pivot based on the moment that we're in, and that's okay. And so, you know, revisiting the driver diagram and AIM each time we meet is a good way to like kind of help center ourselves and then make those revisions. And sometimes those revisions are to the driver diagram. We should never feel like we're tied to a specific driver diagram. If our goals and aims and vision have changed, then we should tweak our driver diagram to make sure that we're still aligning with the vision of our group and of our program transformation. But just making that a regular habit and a regular part, and sometimes that's reprioritization as well.
And that actually wraps up our groups, because 4 and 5 didn't have people jump in them, which was completely fine. We wanted to set these up so you could talk about what you wanted to talk about. But I think everybody actually was encapsulated in 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Gary for some insightful closing thoughts and some vision of what might be coming next.
Hey, no pressure, Brian. Insightful. That's a lot to ask. Can you hit the next slide, please, Wendy?
Yes, Gary, I'm sorry. It might be a lot to ask.
So just a reminder that the virtual pre-conference prior to AMTE is coming up. You can still register for this. And if you go to the pre-conference link, there's some information there. And one thing I wanted to really emphasize with this is there are different levels within the program. So if you have people who maybe are just getting involved, or you're trying to get involved with your team, you might want to even have them go through what we're informally calling the newbie session, which is more of an overview of what is the NIC design and what is it about. Or if for those of you who have been involved, there will be sessions for you as well. And then there's also an overview session, not an overview session, a session that goes across the different audiences, but focuses in on a topic similar to what we just did in the last breakout. So it's going to be heavy on participation, a good chance to interact with your peers and learn more. Anything I need to add there, Wendy? Oh, here. Okay, so I forgot about, here's the slide. Yeah, so that first section is really leveled by what you already know about the NIC design. If you're more of a beginner, there will be sessions that are more of an overview of the NIC design. And then the second breakout is on areas of challenge. All right. We're not going to do a February NIC cast because of the pre-conference. But we will then pick up for the rest of the semester on the first Wednesday of the month at this same time. So we hope to see you there. And this is going to be a ongoing feature of MTEP, the NIC casts. Last of all, save the dates. They all have the same date. Who made this slide? They all say Monday, June 28th. It should say Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I don't know who did this. Okay, it was me. Wow, and no one caught it either. But it's going to be a Monday through Wednesday. This is sort of back to our usual MTEP slot. We had moved to Thursday to Saturday because of the schedule for TOTOS, but they moved to a totally different week. So we decided we could go back to our usual slot. And also, since travel isn't involved, we're just going to do a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so people don't have to give up their weekend. The focus on Wednesday will be on the research action clusters. And so this should be a good program, again, to continue building your work. And finally, just keep in touch on Open Canvas, where we're sending out all the announcements and so on. Also, you do have a coach. If you don't know who it is, let us know, but reach out if you have any questions. Charity.
Yes. My question when you mentioned research action clusters, just because some of us were part of like MTEP 1.0, are we talking about MTEP 1.0 research action clusters, or are we also calling these new teams research action clusters?
Okay, great question. What we're thinking that the existing research action clusters will continue to work as long as it makes sense, as long as they have work to do. But there may also be new ones that form. Like I think the PR squared is sort of in the midst of a reorganization. And so, you know, that may be kind of a new initiative. There may be a new look and emphasis with that. There may be new things that emerge. But I think the thought is that some of, at least, I think all of the racks will continue, at least for now, as long as it makes sense. When when the work here is done, they'll move on. Wendy, do you have any clarification to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, to explicitly kind of reiterate, so all the MTEP 1.0 racks are still around, but yeah, new ones might form, especially around policy or some of the other issues that people are grappling with, where it would be helpful to have a group working across a bunch of different program NICs to try to share and disseminate information across the whole partnership.
So quick follow-up question, that being the case, when we're kind of planning amongst our current teams, say if I wanted to, our focus is shifting to what would probably fit into an already existing rack, maybe even PR squared around the recruitment and eventually retention piece. So would it be beneficial to maybe have some of our new team members join or participate in a different rack, and then some of us who were part of 1.0 go to the current racks? Can we do that?
Yes, yes, the racks are definitely not a life sentence. And so as your focus or priorities shift, you should send your people in your team to the racks where it will be most beneficial to your current priorities.
Yeah, this is, I think that the racks are supposed to support the work you're doing. That's the whole point. So, yeah, definitely.
Well, and I also think it's fair to say that the work that has come out of the current racks will be important for new participants in MTEP 2.0, because some really wonderful things have been done, and that shouldn't be lost in the process. It should be supportive of continuous change in new participants in MTEP 2.0.
And we're hoping to do a better job of making the work of the racks available. That's one of our current goals. So, all right. Well, just again, encourage your team members to attend the pre-conference or any other events. We're really glad to see all of you back today, and wish you the best for a great new semester. Who knows how things will go, but we'll hang in there and do our best. So thanks everyone for participating. It was good to see everyone.